So, you want to hear a story? You know I got one for you. And this one is a first for Now It's Dark. A sequel, a part two, a continuation. This is the continuing saga of DARPA's Project Echo Veil. More specifically, what Project Echo Veil became once released into the wild, when DARPA shared their research, findings, and technology with their partners in the tech industry. Remember, it was DARPA that created DARPANet, the first internet, which became the internet we're all familiar with. They also created GPS, Wi-Fi, instant messaging, and fiber optics. So many things we're all comfortable with and use every day. Welcome to Now It's Dark. Let's look at how Project Echo Veil evolved. In most elections, people argue. They debate candidates, policies, intentions. They imagine futures that feel dramatically different depending on who wins. They worry about consequences, compromises, and what may be lost. But every so often, an election arrives that doesn't feel contested at all. The signs are still there, yard signs, campaign ads, and endless news coverage, but beneath all of it is a strange emotional stillness. Not apathy, not ignorance, something closer to acceptance. As if the outcome has already been emotionally processed long before the vote is cast. Former researchers associated with Project Echo Veil referred to this sensation as inevitability drift. Not persuasion, not coercion, just the gradual emotional alignment with a future that hasn't happened yet. Echo Veil's second phase wasn't designed to change what people believed. It was designed to change how belief translated into behavior. Early behavioral models revealed something unsettling. People don't need to be convinced in order to comply. They only need their attention shaped. Echo Veil began mapping emotional response patterns across large populations, tracking which topics generated sustained engagement, which produced short-lived outrage, and which led to emotional fatigue. The results were consistent. Outrage was powerful, but unstable. It burned hot, burned fast, and burned out. Fatigue, on the other hand, lingered. So the system learned to cultivate what internal documents referred to as issue gravity wells. Topics engineered to feel perpetually urgent, endlessly discussed, and permanently unresolved. These issues dominated headlines, feeds, and conversations. They created participation without progress. Other issues didn't disappear. They simply stopped surfacing. Not censored, not denied, just outpaced. By the time elections arrived, people felt informed, but only about the things Echo Veil had decided were still emotionally accessible. Participation remained high. Debate appeared healthy, but the emotional boundaries had already been drawn. Voting didn't seem like a decision. It felt like closure. The same logic was applied to public protests, which became a new tool to shape public opinion and consensus without resistance. Contrary to what many assume, Echo Veil did not suppress demonstrations, it encouraged them. Protests were amplified, televised, and normalized until they became a permanent background condition. Groups, in many cases funded by the super rich 1%, arose to encourage protests. They provided logistics, signs, slogans, and even pay for the protesters. Marches were scheduled, chants were repeated, coverage followed predictable arcs. Each demonstration felt important in the moment and irrelevant almost immediately afterward. Internal assessments describe this process as pressure venting. Action without consequence wasn't a failure of the system. It was the system, working exactly as it was designed. People felt active, they felt morally aligned, they felt exhausted, and then they moved on. Over time, participation remained visible, but coordination declined. Momentum dissolved. Echo-Val researchers noticed that unresolved action produced the same psychological effect as resolution, without requiring any actual change. By the late 1990s, Echo-Val no longer required isolated environments or controlled test populations, no longer needed government oversight. The research phase was complete. Funding tapered off, facilities closed, records were archived, and personnel migrated quietly into the private sector. Officially, they were hired to work on engagement optimization, trust metrics, and relevance modeling. Unofficially, Echo-Val had found its ideal host. Algorithms didn't need ideology. They only needed feedback. What held attention? What redirected anger? What diffused coordination? Feed systems learned which topics to elevate and which ones to drown in repetition until meaning collapsed. No censorship was required. The truth didn't vanish. It simply lost momentum. By the time people noticed something was wrong, they were already too tired to pursue it. Search results felt complete. Feeds felt personalized. Outrage felt familiar. Everything appeared normal. In 2014, a partial internal document surfaced briefly on an obscure online conspiracy theory forum. It wasn't removed, it wasn't disputed, it wasn't flagged, it was simply ignored. The gentleman who uploaded that document tried to bring more attention to Echo-Val.
I didn't steal the Echo-Val documents because I wanted to expose anything. I copied them because I was afraid I'd forget what I was working on. The language was calm. No threats, no ideology, just optimization. Echo-Val was never about control. That word scared people. Internally, we talked about stability. Suppressing information caused backlash. Overwhelming people didn't. You don't remove ideas, you bury them under relevance. Elections were the breakthrough, not because we changed outcomes, but because people began describing outcomes as inevitable. That's when we knew it worked.
He was quickly dismissed.
Let me be very clear. There has never been a United States government program designed to manipulate political beliefs, voting behavior, or civic participation among American citizens. The Department of Defense does not engage in psychological operations against the domestic population. Any suggestion otherwise reflects a fundamental misunderstanding of how modern information systems operate. People are exposed to a large volume of content every day. That exposure naturally produces patterns. Correlation should not be confused with coordination. Algorithms respond to user behavior. They do not direct it. As for claims involving abandoned communities, mass disinterest, or so-called consensus engineering, there is no evidence these phenomena are the result of intentional design. Frankly, attributing complex social outcomes to a single source is irresponsible. Sometimes society simply moves on. That is not control, that is choice. And I would caution this committee against amplifying narratives that encourage unnecessary curiosity.
If you look at the final line of the internal memo listed as the final note, it states, when consensus is achieved subconsciously, enforcement becomes unnecessary. The sentence didn't feel threatening. It felt obvious. And that may have been Echo-Val's final proof of success. Because if the system works, resistance feels pointless. Curiosity feels inappropriate. Disagreement feels performative. And silence feels reasonable. Which is why no one questioned what happened to the town. So, what do you think? More conspiracy theories? Did any of this make you think about what you see in the real world every day? Of what you see on the news, in your YouTube and X feeds? Make you think about what you, your friends, and coworkers talk about? Those things that are so important to so many people while others just don't care at all? Or maybe this is just a work of fiction and we should have no concerns at all? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, please tap that like button and share with someone else who might like it. And as always, thank you for watching Now It's Dark.